Hi, I'm Robert Benedict from Black Dog Custom Paint and Airbrush in central Utah, and I'm here to introduce you to a highly specialized form of airbrushing that hasn't been addressed in books, magazines, or videos. I'm talking about micro airbrushing. Micro airbrushing has several important uses, some of which include photorealism to achieve minute details, hobby applications that require the painting and detailing of miniature or small-scale models, the ability to paint micro-size embedded images into your artwork, a very hot trend right now, the skill to execute the finest detail possible with an airbrush, to further enhance and sharpen your airbrush skills, and many more uses. And if you think it's hard to paint 2 skulls inside the space of a quarter, I'm going to show you how to paint 10 in the size of a dime. Now let's get started. Right here I have my circle the size of a quarter, and right next to it my circle the size of a dime. Now I'm going to show you how I can put 2 skulls in the size of the quarter, and I'll bet more than 10 in the size of the dime. Using a white Stabilo pencil, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch the 2 skulls inside the quarter.
Now this sketch is just a guideline, so I'm not going to make it as detailed as you might think. But it doesn't need to be detailed. We just need a guideline to get 2 of these inside the quarter, so just a quick one. Quick sketch there. Okay, we're ready to start airbrushing these puppies.
To successfully micro airbrush, the first thing you need to do is to remove the air cap. By doing so, this will allow us to get a much finer line. However, the air cap does serve as a protective cover for the needle, so you'll have to be very careful that you don't touch it to any hard surface or you will risk bending the needle. And it might be a good idea if you want to indicate to yourself the light source. Some of these little details, first, like the eyes, cheekbones. I don't know if you can see this or not, but my arms aren't moving at all. It's really all in the wrist. And when you do micro airbrushing, that's where it's going to be. It's all going to be in the wrist. Also, you have to watch tip dry. It happens a lot, so be careful. I have people that look at some of these itty bitty skulls and they say, "Oh man, did you do that freehand?" And I say, "Yes, I did, man. You are right." You saw how the paint kind of spread a little bit on me. You have to watch that. You're working with very thin paint right now, and it dries up on the tip. Again, this is just it's rough, but you're going to see how this comes to life. I'm going to make it you don't have to be really super careful at this point, because we're going to go back with black and get the dark areas. Just want to get some base. Like I said, we're just getting enough paint down there to kind of fill in some areas. And you have to be careful that you don't get it too heavy. It'll spread out on you like it did on me then. What I like to do is just to get a nice even coat on everything. And I use a lot of candies when I micro airbrush also. And I'll explain to you why. The opaques, you're taking a chance, because it does dry real fast on the needle. So once you start seeing some little specks or anything like that come out, then you know you've got some tip dry going on. And you'll have to repair that immediately in order to be successful. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some candy tangerine first, and then
Then I'm going to get some Spanish gold and put on the top of that. Let's do that right now. Now what we're attempting to do with the tangerine is to knock all that down. Okay, that gives us a nice, and that hides a lot of the imperfections that are in there. Believe me, you're going to have some of those. The main thing we want to do is we want to layer, and that's the whole key to this micro airbrushing, is to layer our colors. I'm going to be switching back and forth from this yellow. Now you need to know that these airbrushes are extremely responsive, so it takes your patience. You're going to have some patience with this. The slightest movement of your finger is going to make paint come out. You'd be surprised at how very little paint is coming out, but that's what we want. I believe in using a lot of short strokes as opposed to one heavy stroke, because you can always put more on, but it's harder to take off what you've done. So you'll notice that when I'm doing this, I'm going over several times in one area to get it to the opacity that it needs to be, and that's why. You don't want to do it all at once, because the paint that we're using is very, very thin, and it has a tendency to spread. And when I say spread, off to the side, I'll show you real quick. See how that spread out like that? Well, that was very easy for me to do that, and you don't want that to happen on a large area inside your graphic there. So with the Spanish gold, we'll just give everything a nice yellow tint. Okay, now what I'm going to do is put some details in this with black. I'm going to darken up the eyes, reestablish the dark areas, and reestablish the nose. On both skulls. And maybe put a little bit of shadow on one side. Get rid of that mistake. Okay, I'm going to go back to Candy Tangerine now. We're going to go over the entire area again. Like I said, we're layering right now. Now we're going to go back to the yellow, and we're going to reestablish our highlights. Maybe this time with a little more detail. Remember, this airbrush is extremely responsive, so it's going to do exactly what you tell it to do. You might do it at the wrong time, so be careful. Like I said, periodically it does dry up on the tip, so you'll have to get that off. And what I like to do is flush it by spraying it wide open off of what I'm working on. It gets things flowing. That's what I mean by it pushing it out like that. We're going to fix that. I'll show you how to fix that, because that's important. When we go to the smaller skulls, I'll go over it with you, but the paint's going to have to be a lot thinner than it is with this. We'll go over that, and we'll go over how to mix it. Okay, now we're going to come back in with a Candy Tangerine. Just a little bit this time, just enough to change that really light yellow. See how it just barely changed? We're going to come in here and We're going to repair this area with the tangerine. Again, we might have to flush it. Alright. Just reaffirm some of these darker areas. I'm going to come in with some black and I'm going to repair this area up in here. Notice that the air pressure went down. You do have the ability with this airbrush to control air pressure right at the gun, right at the trigger. The further you push down, the more air pressure comes out. So that's what I'm doing. I'm controlling the air pressure right now, trying to get these fine lines in here. And I'm just doing the detail work. I would say there's probably maybe 10, 15 psi coming out right now. Now the other thing that you're going to have to do periodically is to shake this mixture up, because I've thinned it way down, and what it likes to do is it likes to settle in the bottom of the cup. When it does that, it gets heavier, and so it doesn't want to spray as good. We're going to do that right now. One thing we'll need to do before we shake it up is to plug the vent hole. If we don't, you'll have paint all over the place. So that's what I'm going to do now, and then we'll just give it a little shake upside down. And anything that did settle to the bottom is now shook up. Make sure you clean it off, clean your hands off, because sometimes it likes to leak out. Next, we'll test it off to the side. And now I've established that I've got a good airflow, or paint flow, and we'll go back to what we're doing. We're establishing some teeth in here. See that? You have to be very careful. And we're going to do a little bit of shading up in here. It doesn't take much. If you're going to try this, don't try it on the customer's stuff first. Get yourself a practice panel. Then the last thing we're going to do is, I always like to put some cold colors in the shaded part. And now that I've got the blue, I'm going to add some blue here to the shaded side of these skulls. Just a hint. And it does dry up, just like the other colors, so it may do that fairly fast on you. Ooh. And we're going to fix that. I'm kind of actually glad that I made that mistake, because we want to show you how to fix stuff. Everybody makes mistakes in this profession. You will too. And we need to show you that. Okay, so I'm just going to go over it with this black, just a little bit, and fix that little mistake. We'll put some shading in there. You'll never even know it was there. Well, you will, but your customer won't. A little bit in the teeth there. And I think these guys are finished. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my gravity feed airbrush. That means it's not suction, it's not pulling it up, it's actually dropping down into it. The paint is in the cup. Okay, the reason I'm doing that is because I want to get some super fine detail. And when we switch to the dime, I'll be using this too. Now, I don't know if you can hear or not, the air pressure now stands at about 5 psi. And I have switched to this gravity gun for a couple of reasons. Number one, at this low of an air pressure, it's kind of hard to create enough suction in the bottom feed cups to keep the paint up at the needle where you need it. And with the gravity feed, it's there all the time. So that kind of helps the paint flow a lot better. Okay, this color is House of Color Lemon Yellow, but it too has a tendency to build up on the tip, so periodically you'll have to clean the tip. It's just one of the duties of airbrushing. But you can see that I can get a lot more detailed than this. I love this part. Allows me to do a lot. I always have people say, I can't believe you airbrush that small. But it is possible, and I like to push myself right to the brink. Right to the limits, the very limits. Now that we've got these other highlights established, I'm going to shoot some Spanish gold over the top of this. See how much that changed it? And now I think these guys are done.
If you think that was cool, my next trick's going in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Now I'm not going to sketch these first, because you can't sketch first. You just got to go for it. And I'm telling you right now, we're going to get a heck of a lot of skulls in here. I'm going to get as many as I can. I am using the same airbrush. It's a gravity feed. The air pressure is, I'd say it's about 3. Now with this, you do have to clean the tip off fairly often. I'm going to put different size skulls in there. I know I told you I was going to put 10 in there, but I think I've changed my mind. I think one of you guys are going to end up putting 10 in there, so I'm going to have to do you one better. I think we're going to go for, I don't know, let's go for 20. 20 skulls in the head of a dime. If we get to 20 people, and I got room for more, you can bet I'm putting them in there. Now I have to control my breathing while I'm doing this. And notice that my arms aren't moving at all. This is all in the wrist. You have to use your wrist for all of this. At the end, I'm going to show you guys some practice exercises that's going to help you. Now I'm going to make some bigger skulls in here because I got plenty of room here. I got plenty of room. I'm going to make 10 easy. Periodically we do have to flush it. And don't forget the paint in here is very, very, very thin. So remember what I told you about it settling to the bottom of the cup. Well, it's going to do the same thing to this gravity feed. That doesn't stop it just because I changed airbrushes. And you'll have to forgive me because talking and doing this is very hard. That ought to be a record too. I think we'll apply for that one. Okay, now periodically what I'm going to do is I'm going to stir it up. Right now it's starting to get a little chunky. It's starting to spit stuff out on me. I'm not liking that. And that's really bad for detail. What I'm going to do is I've rolled up a piece of paper. I don't know if you can see that. And we're just going to stir that up a little bit. What's happened is the pigment has fallen down to the bottom. And so it's making the paint thicker. You're probably wondering, how can paint that thin settle down to the bottom? Because really, this is reduced about 1,000%. I'll tell you straight up, that's a right off the bench rule breaker, but I tell you right now, I ain't worried about rules. I got skulls to paint. Let's get another one in here. This ain't easy to do, folks. So take your time and be patient. If you can't get all these skulls in the head of a dime, watch the video again. Look at those little bitty eyeballs. This is not for the faint at heart. Now at the end of this DVD, I'm going to show you folks how to mix this paint up. But for the most part, you're going to have to experiment with mixing it up and the consistency and the air pressure and find out what works for you. I'll tell you what works good for me, and then you can go back and take that back to your shop and see if you can do this. And by golly, if you can get 20 heads in a dime, I want you to send me a picture, please. I might even come out and visit your shop. Again, we periodically clean the tip off. Now I've got that needle way up close, but sometimes close is not good. You wouldn't think that, but there's a point at which you can get too close and the paint won't come off, or it'll veer off to the left or to the right or something like that, something really weird. And I think it has something to do with the air bouncing off of your surface and coming back and just blowing your paint everywhere. So you can't get too close, even though you might think that getting closer is going to get you more detail. That's not always true. Now they made me talk while doing this, and that's really hard to do because I like to hold my breath. And by the time I'm done with this, you know, I've turned different shades of blue. Now that you've got the idea, I'm going to finish the rest of these off camera, but I'm going to count them first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, I think I can get 25 in there. And notice how I'm using the black background as my eyes, because this is tough to do, much less go back and try to put eyes and stuff in it. So I'm going to use my background and as an advantage there. I was actually shooting for 10 skulls inside the head of a dime, but I got 23, and that's a personal record. Now I'm going to take Candy Tangerine. We're going to go over the entire surface. I'm going to actually make this pretty dark. Because it's so small, I want to go through as little steps as possible. When you're working that small, it's really easy to mess up. So I'm going to make this really dark. Okay, next I'm going to go back to my yellow, and I'm going to come back on each one of these skulls. I'm going to put this little highlight. We're going to highlight around the eyes. And on the left side of each one of these skulls. For all intents and purposes, this is our detail. And then what we'll do after, maybe we'll put some eyeballs in there. Again, we'll have to clean off the tip of our airbrush periodically so we can get a crisp line. As crisp as we can, anyway. And if you get a good line, because it's going to be hard to establish a good line, this detailed. But if you get one, don't stop. Just hurry up and switch to the next one. See, I just really quickly switched to the next skull because the line was good. Okay, we're just about finished here with the last highlights on this. Just get a couple more here.
Boy, that was a lot of fun. And before we get on to our next project, I'm going to show you some important drills that's going to get you to micro airbrush a lot faster. Okay, the first exercise that we're going to do is just a series of dots. And the important thing here to remember is A, you need to have the air cap off to be able to accomplish this. What I want you to do is to just make a series of dots without the spreading going on. And what I mean by that is, watch this. You see how it's spreaded like that? We don't want that. We just want a series of dots. And this is going to require a lot of patience and some skill on your part because this airbrush is really, really, really responsive. If you use the gravity feeds, any of the gravity feeds by Iwata, they are extremely responsive. Depending on how thin you've got your paint is going to depend on how these dots turn out. Just dots. And as soon as you get opaqueness, go on to the next dot. This is kind of tough. If you'll notice, it's happening to me, that spreading. But just keep going. If it spreads on you, don't get discouraged, go to the next dot. The next exercise that I want you to do is a spread. And we're actually going to make a circle. Watch this. Isn't that cool? And this is going to, you want to make them all the same size. Look at that. What you're doing is you're purposely spreading the paint into a circle. That's a very, very, very good tip I just gave you. That's the $100 tip. I don't know what you paid for the video, but I want to check from you. Okay. This will help you gain control. We don't want it to spider web. We want a nice circle, and it's kind of tough. Notice I've got a little bit of spider webbing going on. So do about, I don't know, 5 rows, 5 down of that. Next thing, if you're an experienced airbrush artist, everybody knows what the dagger stroke is, and we're going to do that. Oops. As you can tell, this is not easy. All I want you to know, see, it's not easy. You really have to have some patience. Let's just start off, and you may see how I kind of shook like that. What I'm doing is I'm going over it several times to get the opaqueness. It's very, very thin. It has to be in order to achieve it. Notice I'm not real good at it, so don't pick on yourself. Every now and then I need to practice too. Don't think that we don't practice. I've been airbrushing for 30 years this summer, and I practice all the time. So try these dagger strokes, and you can try them from right to left, like I'm doing here, and then make yourself a line of left to right, and then up and down. Notice I'm going over the heavy spot, the wide spot, several times. That's what it takes to get opaque. Like I said, you don't want to get it to spread. And try it up and down, and then from top to bottom, from bottom to top. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an itty bitty bitty skull over here to the right, and I'll show you how these strokes are going to work for you. Get 2 eyeballs. We just do that little spread thing. Okay. Then we get the skull, like that. It's actually quite simple. And then some teeth area here. Wow, that's teeny. Okay, a lot of people ask me if I tape a magnifying glass to my head or something, but I don't. What I do have is magnifying glasses on. They don't magnify it a lot, but they magnify enough to where I can see what I'm doing. You might want to consider that when you're micro airbrushing if you can't see this, or if you're an old guy like me. Okay, we'll do another skull right here. Also, periodically, you may want to put your thumb over the bowl and give it a good shake, because when the paint is thinned down this thin, it tends to want to settle or separate, whichever you would prefer, a lot quicker. And I wouldn't be wrong in saying that the paint is probably thinned down, I don't know, 500-600% in order to get these little bitty skulls. So periodically, I'll put my thumb over the bowl, give it a good shake, then a good spray out. These little skulls. I don't even know if the camera can get this close in here, but these are great. Look at that. And you don't have to put a heck of a lot of detail in these to get them to look good. You can see what I've done. As long as you've got some distinguishable features, such as the eyes, you can create some pretty cool little bitty skulls in here. Now, your air pressure is a very important thing, and periodically you may see some paint, like a little paint speck, come off the end of the needle and go somewhere you don't want it to go. If that happens, one of 2 things is happening. That's an indication of A, your paint is settling in the bottom, or it's just warm air coming out of your compressor and drying this paint before it hits your surface, your substrate. And so it dries up on the tip of the needle, and once it feels like doing it, at the most inopportune time, always, it's going to fly off onto your project. This is just great. I love doing this because it really, 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 it tests your limits. It really does.
And you can notice how I'm incorporating everything that I'm showing you from the exercises into these skulls. I'm doing a little stroke. It's a curved one. You know, it's kind of like this. Oops. You can see how easy it is to, but you see that? I just curved it to make the head of the skull. Just do a little spreading like that to make his eyes. If you want to, you can try to get a nose in there. But this, ooh. And sometimes you can use your mistakes to your advantage, you know. That one I think is unsavable. We'll paint it black and redo it at a later time. Anyway, those exercises are really going to help you. And basically, they're the same exercises that I would recommend if you were doing larger stuff. But notice that the only thing that's moving is my hand. Actually, my knuckle is rested on the substrate, and I'm just moving my knuckle around like that. None of my arms or anything else is moving because it's so tiny. It's not necessary. So you have to be prepared to do these exercises really small with very little movement on your part. And if you want something very dark, you have to go over it. I mean, I'm going over that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you know, like 10, 12 times to get it opaque. But these exercises will help you a whole lot. And like I said, do these in every direction. And you'll have to experiment with your paint. I find that House of Color lettering urethanes work the best for this, and the reason is the pigments are ground so fine that there's very little spitting and stuff. And if there is, it's my own inabilities or my own weaknesses. Because this small, it's very hard to maintain control. But the House of Color lettering urethanes really work the best. Also, if you find that you've reduced it, and it's still spitting or still drying up on the end of your needle, grab some RU315. It's a retarder that House of Color makes, and add some of that in there. What that does is that slows drying time in your paint, and so that's going to give you an edge on this. But don't do too much, or you'll kill it. It'll never dry on you, and you'll have a hard time clear coating it. Okay, I'm going to do just a couple more of these, and then we're going to get started on the next project, which, incidentally, is a micro mural. We'll show you how to complete one of those. But definitely do these exercises, because this will help you a lot. And, very important, use an airbrush that has a history of great detail abilities. And I suggest the Iwata line because they are great products. They are manufactured extremely well. The engineering is just absolutely incredible. Far superior to anything else that's out there on the market today.
This is a model of a C6 Corvette. And we're going to do a hood mural and graphics on the side. The first thing we always do is surface prep. So I'm going to Scotch-Brite this hood, take away all the shiny areas. Remember that shiny areas will not hold paint. So we'll do that first. Now if there's a bend like this, make sure you get into that bend with the corner. If you cut a Scotch-Brite with scissors, it'll make a nice corner like that. And you can just stick that corner right in that little edge there. Make sure you get all the way to the edge. And around this edge and these edges too, because when we clear coat, we want to clear coat a little bit on this edge too. So if you can just get a little bit on that edge, scuff it up all the way around the whole outside,
Be doing good. Remember, no shiny areas. Shiny bad, dull good. Okay. There we go. Okay, hopefully we have no shiny. Okay, our next step is to degrease this. So we're going to use some degreaser here. You can use waterborne or solvent-borne. It doesn't matter. Okay, get it really good, scrub it. And then with a dry paper towel, you're going to dry it off as much as you can with the paper towel. Then you can, if it remains wet, you can use your airbrush to blow it dry like this. Look at that, boom, just like that. Okay, I think we're ready to start our micro mural. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch the mural out with a Stabilo pencil. Now the reason I'm using a Stabilo is because we can draw on any car surface, any painted surface, and if there's leftover sketch marks, it'll come off with water. Now, if you try to take it off with a solvent-borne cleaner or something like that, it won't do anything to it. It's really kind of weird, but I like it like that. So, either you have a picture that you're going to go by. I'm just going to go right off of the cuff. I'm just going to paint let's do a dragon. How about that? Do a nice little dragon here. But if you have a picture, that's good. Do a dragon busting out of, busting out of the earth. How about that? That'll look pretty cool. Now I can just do this right off the top of my head just because I've done about 900 of these, so. Mouth open. This is going to look really cool. And we'll give him some of these little scale things or whatever you call them. And we'll do fire. We'll do some micro fire. That's kind of cool. The real fire. These are little chunks of the whatever the product is on these Stabilo pencils. You can just take your finger and wipe them right off, and it won't affect the mural or what you've already got on there. Now you don't want to go too heavy with the Stabilo because remember, you're going to clear coat over this. Sometimes you can use water, to wash off the excess after you're done with your mural. But I'm going to do some kind of weird background too. You can do the background first, then draw your foreground. But in this case, I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to have much of a background. I'll just put some streaks or something like that. Okay, I'm ready to get airbrushing. I'm going to do the background first, and I've switched from a gravity feed to a suction feed. And I've cranked the pressure up to about 20 psi. There's no real hard detailing here, or small detail I should say, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm going to do a black background, and it's going to kind of radiate out. We'll put some violets and stuff like that in, but right now it's so small. Okay, get in here. I'm just shooting off the cuff. I mean, if you feel like you want to put some transfer paper on here and cut it out, that's fine, but I'll tell you what, you're going to make a lot of work for yourself. Plus, doing it this way, just freehand, will improve your freehand skills. But again, don't practice on a customer's model. Get your own model, or just get a piece of metal, from the junkyard, an old hood or something like that, and practice on that. But again, practice makes perfect, so. Notice I'm not spending a lot of time on this, but I am leaving boundaries where my artwork is. Now this is House of Color Black, BC 26.
Alright, I'm going to go to another color now. I think I've got all the places. Well, let's do a little bit more here. Trying to get a little bit of contrast. Make it a little... Sometimes you got to clean the tip off. Gets built up on there. There we go. How easy that was. Okay, get good balance. Balance the black spaces in there opposed to mural spaces. That's important. Chunk going right there. Okay, I'm going to switch colors now. Okay, now we're going to use House of Color SG108. It's called So Blue. And before, I had told you that the black I was using was BC25 or 26. I'm sorry, BC26 is white. The black is actually BC25. I get them mixed up sometimes. Now, the reason, I'm not masking this off or anything like that. I'm not really worried about overspraying here because it's all going to be painted. All I really need, if you notice, I don't know if you can get close enough, but the white line is still there. So I've still got a guideline. And that's all I need. You may need more than that. And if you feel like it, you can, after you do the background, you can resketch it on there with the Stabilo. I just choose not to. No biggie. Okay, we're done with the blue. Now we're going to use yellow. It's lemon yellow, House of Color SG101. And I want some of this yellow to be in the dragon here. Then I want some of that yellow to be at the bottom of the black. I think I want it to look like he's coming up out of a lava kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and paint the dragon as yellow as I can get it. And what I'm going to do is not worry about the overspray, turning that black, a little bit grayish. Because what I'll do is I'll put some candy over that, and it'll look really cool. When we get to that part, I'll show you. A little bit of yellow in this guy. For the most part, I think we can make this dragon red. Also, some lighting and stuff coming from where he's coming up out of the earth. So let me do a little bit of lighting here. And again, it's rough. Notice I'm using the Eclipse, which is a suction feed. I haven't gone to the gravity feed yet, because it's not really necessary for me right now. I'm not doing a whole lot of detail at the moment. But when we get to there, it's going to look really loud. Painting small stuff, it's a real challenge. And even if you don't like painting small stuff, if you try it, I guarantee you it's going to make your big stuff a lot better. This is a great exercise for any airbrush artist who's doing any kind of painting. If you can paint small and make it look good, by golly, you can paint big and make it look great. So it's a good exercise for anybody. From the beginner, from the hobbyist, right up to the professional that does this all day, every day. Now, I don't do miniature stuff all day, every day, but when I have to, and I'm called upon to do it, it's good to know that I can. The other thing that's good to know is that there's tools out there that can actually do it. Years ago, the airbrushes we had were not of this caliber. This is very high caliber airbrushes, very high caliber equipment. And so I'm just really thankful that these guys put the time and the effort into producing such a quality product. Makes my work easier. Okay, I'm kind of happy with that, but I didn't get enough overspray on the black. So I'm just going to put a little bit of my own in there. There we go. That'll make things easier. Also, he's going to have fire coming out of his mouth. So, let's just get that while we got the yellow in hand. Now, I've thinned this down a little bit because we are micro airbrushing. So, several coats is the word of the day here. Try to do it in one coat, it's going to spread out on you. It's not going to look very good. Now when you're micro airbrushing, it's usually good to start out with 1:1 ratio, mixing ratio. 1 part paint, 1 part thinner. And then I put another 1/4 part of retarder in. And start there and see if that works. Also, as far as air pressure is concerned, start at about 10 psi and see if that works for you. And then, you know, crank it down from there. You'll know if it's doing what you want it to do at 10 psi. Like I said, I'm usually, when I'm micro airbrushing, right now it's at about 20 to 25. Because I'm not really micro airbrushing. I'm just filling in some wide areas. I'm not doing anything that's super detailed. Now some of you might say, oh yeah, right. But it's not super detailed. So start off 1:1, 1 part paint, 1 part reducer, 1 part retarder. Actually, don't do one part retarder. Do about 75% to start. Okay. And then once you start painting, you'll notice if it's spitting paint, you'll notice right away what you need to do. But it's fine calculations between your retarder and your reducer. You don't want to put too much retarder in, I guarantee you, because what it'll do is it'll take away that speedy dry time in a way that's not going to be productive. And you may even have some clear coating issues with that. What we're doing when we're reducing this stuff as fine as we are is we're basically breaking all the rules. And when you break the rules, be prepared to pay the consequences. But I have found that those ratios work really well for me to start. And I haven't had any delamination problems. And that's when the clear coat starts to flake off of your mural because there's no cross-linking going on between the paint and the clear coat. You gotta have that. Okay, we're gonna almost be done with the yellow here. Okay, I'm done with the yellow. Okay, the next color I'm going to use is Candy Tangerine. Its color code is KK08. And we're just going to blend this up a little bit from the bottom and a little bit here on the top. Just going to orange things up a little bit. Blend it out. A little bit up here. Now again, this is the basics. There's no details in here, so I can be as rough as I want to be. Okay, that'll be enough of that. Okay, the next color I'm going to use is KK17, which is Candy Violet. I'm just going to put a little bit up here in the blue. I love this color. Just makes everything feel bright. Right over the blue. Change it to violet. If I was to put it right over the red, it just makes the red darker. So that blue is going to help with my background there. Okay, it doesn't take much of this, so we're done. Okay, the next thing I want to do is reaffirm some of the sketching that I did earlier. One thing I want to do is his arm here. That way I don't have to guess where everything is going. Get some claws going in there. You don't want to do a whole lot of guessing on this stuff, so very lightly, very lightly. Reaffirm his eye here, because we're going to get into micro brushing here next. We want to have everything in place. We'll reaffirm some of his facial features here. You know, that's kind of earth coming up here. Good stuff. A lot. Okay, I'm done sketching. We're going to come in here, we're going to put some details, micro airbrush details. And this dragon. You can regulate your air pressure at the airbrush. It's a different skill, you know, but probably you can get 2 psi out of this. This really is the part that I like. Once you start getting details in there and you see it start coming together, it's very, very rewarding. Okay, the details we're putting in here are just, you know, stuff with his mouth, get around his eyeball, stuff like that. The dark areas, some of the shading and stuff like that can be done at this point. Remember, the paint is pretty thin that we're using, so might have to double over, triple over some of the areas to get them, you know, the way you want it. And I'm just using a dark brown. We're gonna come back with some black, you know, but right now I want to get some of the dark areas, some of the, I guess you call them medium tones. I want to get some of these scales too. Starting with some scales. Find a good pattern. And when you get a good line, you want to stay with that line. You know, sometimes you'll get a good line and you can go with it for a while. Remember to clear it a little bit. Occasionally. There we go. See, we're getting a good line there. And you're going to have to stay with that good line. Because it could leave at any moment. It really is a gamble. But once you get a rhythm going, like with these scales, if I get a rhythm going, I'm going for it. Gotta stay on it, baby. Okay, so we got build up. That took care of my rhythm right there. But reestablish it and go on. And again, these are the medium tones. So if you mess up a little bit here, it's not really a big deal. Because we'll probably come back and reestablish some of these areas with either darker or lighter colors, or both. Now I'm seeing some little specks come out, and more than likely the paint is just not thin enough. But I'm not going to thin it down. I'm just going to kind of take my chances, because I want the brown. I don't want to have to go over these scales 2 or 3 times. I want them to be dark enough. And it's working out pretty good. If I got to clean every 12 scales or so, then so be it. Which, that's exactly what's happening. But that's okay. I want to be able to do this in one stroke per scale. Just for time's sake. Let's see, I'm not really worried about that little mess up there, that little blowout. Because I'm going to come back with some lighter colors in there. And I can cover that up pretty easily. You see, once you get a line, you got to keep it. Like I said, it could go any minute. And the needles on these things are... There's such a fine point. Did you hear? I don't know if you heard that or not. That little squeak that came out of there. But that little squeak was a little piece of paint trying to come off. And it did. I'm not going to get too detailed up in there with this. Not with this color anyway. Let's put it that way. Once I get these scales, we'll do the scales on the tail there. Then we might, I think we'll probably come in with some black in here and reestablish that stuff. But let's get the tail, scales on there. Outline of these scales. And really, this dark brown is not, you see that little spit where I did it like that? As soon as that happens, you know it's gonna, you gotta wipe that tip off. But if you can get to it before it comes off, that's even better. Okay, I'm not gonna worry about the detail up in there. We can get that with a lighter color. But I wanna do a little bit more up in here. Just a little bit there. You can hardly see this brown against the red. Let's do his nostril there. Maybe a little. It's hard to do. I don't know how I'm even talking to you folks and doing this at the same time, because normally I hold my breath. Okay, I want to put a lighter color in here, so we're going to stop. Okay, I'm going to come in now with some lemon yellow, and we're going to put some details in these little scales here. So do a little test off to the side, make sure we're good to go. So I'm going to highlight the bottoms of each one of these. Now I can tell already that my paint is way too heavy. Too much pigment in there. Okay, I added just a little bit of reducer to that mixture. Now we should be good to go. Oh yeah. Now we're looking good. What I'm going to do on each one of these scales is give it a little highlight. Now you guys don't need to see this whole thing because you get the idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the rest of these scales off camera. Okay, we're just going to finish up the scales here. A couple on this tail. White highlights there. I'm actually using yellow. See those little bitty dots? And that's why you should work on those. Okay, that's a wrap on those. Clean this up just a little. This is the point at which you really want to use this brush to its full potential. Put any shading you got to put in. Make sure it's mixed up right. I'm using a lot more air pressure right now because I want it to atomize really good. I'm not so much interested right now in making some real fine details, because I am doing some shading. So I want it to atomize. And that's just what it's doing. It's looking really good. So we'll come back in here and we'll redefine some of these little boundaries here. Redefine that horn. Don't forget to clean this thing off periodically. It's not looking too bad. Just some shading up in the tail, the top. A bit more air pressure. Top of his arm there, just a shade. Top of his neck. Notice it's all in the wrist. We're not moving our arms very much at all. See the wrist. Moving the arms and you have this all over the place. I'll tell you right, when the airbrush is working just right for you, this can be a real pleasure. But when it's not, it can really tear you up. It's not doing too bad right now. Just a little more black in this area and darken it up.
Okay, so you guys can pretty much see where I'm going with that. What I want to do is I want to put some final white highlights in here. Off camera, I'll do the rest of this and we can show you how it comes out. But we are pretty darn close. With the exception of a few white highlights. I think we're closing in on it. What I want to do for you before I leave is I want to get the fire in here coming out of his mouth. I want you folks to see that. Micro fire. How about that, Tim? Okay, let's define that bottom chin a little bit more. Just a little bit. Okay, now let's do some microfire. Okay, I'm going to come in here with some lemon yellow. Nice color lemon yellow. And we're going to start off by making a few licks of fire coming out of his mouth. Look at that. That's pretty cool. Really bright. And I actually mixed this a little bit thicker just so it would be really super bright. We're going to go over it with some candies and tone it down a little bit. What we'll do is put it up on here really bright at first. Those candies will tone it down a little bit. Then we'll come back with some more lemon yellow like this. Only we'll thin it down quite a bit because we just, well, you'll see. This is going really good. Now, as far as fire goes, choose your own way to do fire. Make it the new way. There's a lot of guys doing fire out there these days. No real right way. Don't have to do it my way. I just happen to like it. You can hear that I've kind of cranked up the pressure for this. You see those little specks right there? That's what I'm talking about. But we'll cover those up. Most mistakes can be pretty much fixed without anybody even knowing they're there. I'm just going to figure out how to do it. Use your creativity, and you will. You'll notice I'm having to clean the tip off quite a bit. And that's because I mixed it pretty thick. When I said that I mixed it kind of thick, what I meant was that I didn't reduce it as much as I normally would to get those really fine lines. Okay, I think we're done with that bright yellow. Okay, now we're gonna put some candy tangerine in there. Right along the edges. Just on the edges there. While we're there, we're just gonna kind of darken it up right in here. Some tangerine. Candy is great. Candy is sweet. I think while we're at it, we'll just throw a little bit back in here. shake this guy up a little bit. Okay, we're done with the candy tangerine. Now I'm going to come in with some candy Spanish gold, put it right over that bright yellow. It's just going to make it a little bit yellower. See that? Hardly a change, but enough. Okay, as before, I said I was going to over-reduce that yellow again and use it up in here, and that's just what we're doing. Just in a few places. Here and there, we'll make a little hot spots. Definitely up front. Just a couple little hot spots here and there. Just a hint. Trust me, that's all it takes. I think I'll get a little hint of yellow up in here, a little highlight. Kind of define his horn a little bit. A few little places on his arm. We'll get a couple of the scales in the middle. Because that fire, this is kind of reflecting the fire here. So we want to give that feeling of hot right up in here. See how easy it is for that to spread? But it doesn't look bad, so you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. It's very, very small. Put a little bit right here. You have to be very, very careful because the airbrush is just, sometimes it's over-responsive. I know it does exactly what I want it to do about 75% of the time. The other 25%, I just gotta wait until it's ready. It's really kind of weird, but sometimes they got a mind of their own. Put a few little highlights up in his neck. It's actually looking pretty darn good right now for a micro mural. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm shaking it up, mixing it up, because what it did was a lot of that pigment kind of settled to the bottom. Okay, that's good. I'll tell you what, I'm not pulling back very far at all. If you could measure it, you'd have to measure it with some kind of killer millimicrometer, because it doesn't take much. I'm going to come back in with my brown right now. I'm going to make this earth part. It's right here.
piece right here. These are just kind of chunks of earth. Little rolled up. Actually, let's put one right there, kind of flying up. And we'll outline these in a dark color, maybe black. There's a chunk right back here that you can hardly see. A little bit of tip dry there. We'll take care of that. Notice how it just stopped working on me. Paint just stopped coming out. And once I got that little chunk off there, it's just magic. Okay, I think I'm just about done with the brown. I think there's a chunk behind there here, behind his arm. I'll just blend that out. And let's get another little chunk right there. Okay, now we're going to come in with the House of Color Black. Do a little outline on this stuff. And we'll put some cracks in the earth there. Sometimes you gotta just clean it out. I'm actually going to get rid of this part. I don't think it really belongs in there. Reinforce this black area here, and up here a little bit.
Do it right there.
Now that I've finished this micro mural, and by the way, I really like the way it turned out, what I'm going to do now is paint some really nice flames on the side of this car. Now off camera, I've prepped the surface, I've laid down some transfer tape, drew out the flames, and now we're going to cut them out with a razor knife. There we go. Now we can peel off the transfer tape, get up under it with the razor knife. There we go. And by the way, when you're working this small, you have to be very, very careful. You don't pull out the wrong stuff. Okay, here we go. Let's see how we did. Look at that. That's coming out really, really nice. Very nice. And voila, one flame job. Now we're going to paint it a nice fade. Using House of Color white, and that's BC 26. We're going to lay down a little white base coat first. Not too heavy, because we don't want a real thick edge on these. Just enough to get it white. Now we're coming in with SG 101. That's a lemon yellow. And we're going to put a nice coat of lemon yellow on that. Okay, you got to make sure that this is dry between coats. If it's not, it'll build up on the edge really badly. It'll just make your project look really, really bad. So make sure it's really good and dry before you get to the next coat. So I'm using just the air from the airbrush. And if you got a hair dryer, and maybe you want to use a hair dryer on that, it's probably going to be a little bit quicker. Okay, using white, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the tips of each flame white. Now here's where your micro airbrushing techniques are going to come in real handy. Because we're just doing the tips, and we don't want to use that stroke, that small stroke. Just get the tips. Now this is a little bit difficult because I'm having to do this with one hand. But you'll get it. Unless you can strap this car down. You got to make sure that you don't get it off into the other flames, and that's going to be really, really tricky, especially one-handed. Okay, the white tips are done. Now I'm going to use KK08, that's Candy Tangerine, to do a nice orange fade. Very nice. Candy Tangerine with just a little bit of opaque black in it. And we're going to put a little dark shadow right there underneath each one of those loops. You see that? Basically all it is one of those dagger strokes. Curved dagger stroke. We'll do that one.
We'll do this one. We want to stay just off of the tape. Let's do this one up here. Notice we're just off the tape. We're using a little bit of a gap right there. Leave that gap. See that? That's what we want. Okay. Get the other ones a little bit darker. You may have to go over this 2 or 3 times, but that right there is just what we want. That's what this is all about. It's going to take some time and some patience. Do that one. Let's do this one. If you have to hold your breath while doing this, do so. It might keep you a little more steady. I have to talk during this, so I don't have a choice. And I think this looks great, so I think we're going to wrap this up. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to peel this off and see what we got. I like to peel the outside first, as much as I can. Oh, this is going to come out real nice. I'm real happy with this. Nice and clean. Nice and clean. That's the way we like it. Peel that outside. That's looking really good. Then we'll get the loops. Just get right up under the loop with the knife. You don't want to cut. You want to cut the surface, so just get right up underneath the tape with the knife. And you always want to peel it back on itself, just in case there's an area that didn't get prepped really good, because if you don't, it will pull the paint up with it. So always pull the tape back on itself. This is an exploded version, but pull it back on itself, just like that. If you go straight up like that, you'll risk a chance of damaging your work. Wow, look at that micrographic. That looks just great. Micro airbrushing requires a lot of patience, practice, and determination. But as you can see, the rewards are well worth it. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.